Hello friends, let us today learn what is business letter. I'm your friend Hemkant Gawade. Let us try to understand what is business letter. A business letter is nothing but it is the official and formal way of correspondence between two or more firms, and that is in black and white it means that it is a written document. Now there are different contents of business letter or elements of business letter. The first content is nothing but that is head address. Usually the head address is written at the center and top corner of the letter. It includes name of the organization, detailed address and other details. After head address, outward number is written. Outward number is nothing but it is group of many similar kind of letters, and it has a specific number, and that particular record is preserved in the outward register. Then the date normally is written on right hand side. There are different ways of writing the date. Moving on to the next part, that is the inside address. As far as the inside address is concerned, it should be written always in short. The inside address should include the designation of the person, name of the organization and city. Moving on to the next part, that is subject. As far as subject is concerned, the reader should get the idea, that is what is the basic purpose of writing the letter, so that he can get the idea that what might have been written in the letter. Next, even if any previous correspondence is made with uh, that particular party to whom we are writing the letter, then it can be written in reference column. As in formal meet, we say hello. In letter, there is a way to write or a way to greet the reader, and that is salutation. So the examples of salutation is dear sir, madam, like. Moving on to the next part, that is body of the letter or the content. Body of the letter is classified into three different parts. The first part is introductory paragraph, wherein the writer writes what exactly he wants to say. The letter or the subject of the letter is discussed in short in the introductory paragraph. That particular subject is discussed in detail in the main paragraph of the letter, and lastly, the letter is concluded. In the concluding paragraph, the sender always write what is the necessary action that he expects from the receiver. So that has been included in concluding paragraph. Coming to the concluding part, that is at the end of the letter, as we have started the letter with saying formally hello, we have to end it with saying formally bye bye to the receiver. So that is known as complimentary close. There are different examples of complimentary close, that is yours faithfully, yours sincerely. It is important that the writer or the authorized person should sign that letter. Unless and until the letter is signed, it cannot be treated as an authentic and appropriate letter. The person signing should write the name. Now there might be different documents that can be attached with the letter. So the list of the document is known as enclosure. If anything is left from the letter, that can be included in the postscript, but as far as possible, postscript should be avoided from business letter because it creates a bad impression that the writer, while writing a letter, hasn't taken due precaution, and that is the reason some part has been left. Let us move to the next part. Now we have different types of business letter. Let us see one by one which are different types of business letters. The first type of letter is enquiry letter. Now, this particular enquiry letter, before the businessman or before the buyer make the actual purchases, before making actual purchases, he would like to inquire about the goods, that what are different variety of goods is available and what are rates and what are other terms and conditions. So this particular letter is drafted by a prospective buyer to the seller. Moving on to the next type of letter, which is reply to inquiry letter. So we have seen that in inquiry letter that the buyer before purchasing try to inquire about the goods. So here in reply to inquiry letter, the seller, whatever goods the buyer or the prospective buyer has inquired, he gives the entire detail of the goods which buyer has inquired, and also he makes the appeal for the purchase. Now this particular letter is drafted by the seller to the buyer. Next type of letter is order letter. Here in this order letter, the buyer confirms that what type of goods he want to purchase, and he orders or instruct the seller and demand the goods which he requires or he want to purchase, wherein he write the details of goods to be purchased, quantities, etc. This particular letter is drafted by buyer to the seller. The next type of letter is complaint letter. Now, as the name itself suggests, it's a complaint letter. Now, if that has been drafted, of course, by the buyer to seller, now what are the occasions to draft a complaint letter? If the goods which the buyer has received is faulty, or if he hasn't received the entire goods, or if the goods are of different color, if it is not of superior quality, or if the goods are received are totally different or not as per the expectation or order, then the buyer may write or buyer may complain about these goods to the seller. So the letter that is used for this particular purpose is known as a complaint letter. Next type of letter is dues collection. Dues means it is nothing but it is amount which is unpaid by a particular person to the firm. So demand that particular dues or to remind dues, that particular dues letter can be drafted by the seller to the buyer. The purpose of writing dues collection letter is to remind the buyer that he has purchased goods on credit basis and some amount is due from him or her, and that amount is still unpaid. So it is nothing but it is reminder paid by the seller. It is also a request made by the seller, and it is appeal to that particular debtor or buyer that he is supposed to pay that particular unpaid amount, and the balance amount, uh, the transaction details, all these things can be included in dues collection letter. Next, there is status enquiry letter. Now this status is different than other status. Here the status means the financial position or the condition of the buyer. Now when it happens that if some new buyer approaches the seller and asks or demands for credit, as the seller is new or the buyer is new for the seller, he first of all want to know that what is the financial standing or financial condition or the market position of that particular buyer. So for that proposed customer, the seller wants to know that whether it will be okay to give a credit to that particular customer or not. So seller contacts the another seller who is the buyer is already purchasing goods from that particular seller. So he contacts and try to ask that particular seller that whether it will be okay to deal with this particular buyer or not. So herein he assures that whether the prospective buyer is trustworthy or not, and if he deals or if he sells the goods to this particular buyer on credit basis, whether the credit will be easily recovered or not. So the status inquiry letter is drafted by the seller to another seller, which includes the information of the buyer who has expressed or he has demanded or requested to purchase goods on credit basis. Now, the second seller may give the reply to the status inquiry letter. Now, this particular reply may be favorable or unfavorable. We have seen in the earlier part that the seller drafts a letter to the seller and asks about the buyer. Now, herein, the second seller gives the reply to the first seller about mentioning the details or credentials about the buyer. This particular answer might be favorable, that yes, you can go ahead and you can deal or you can transact, there is no problem, or there may be some issues with that prospective buyer and the reply might be unfavorable. So the requested information by the seller, that what is the financial condition, financial standing, market position of that particular buyer, this particular letter was drafted and the suitable reply is given by second seller to the first seller, and the details of the prospective buyer is given in the status enquiry letter. Of course, it's a favorable and unfavorable. Now, apart from this, there are many forms of a business letter wherein there's a form called as memo. Now, memo is nothing but memo includes rules, regulation, and action, and these things are included in memo. The second part is office circular. Now, office circular is mostly used for the internal information, that is internal communication type. So it is used for internal information and decisions that is to be circulated amongst the office bearer or within the office. That is the reason it is known as office circular. The information is circulated amongst the concerned people to the larger extent. The next part or next type is office folder. For example, if there are some change taken place, for example, the timing has changed, or some important policies are changed, or some important decisions are taken, uh, something has happened accordingly and some important decision has to be taken, so communicate all such decisions and changes. Office order can be drafted. As the name suggests, it is been office order, and it has been always given by the higher authority. So that's all for now. I'm very much thankful to you for your patience listening. If you have any doubt, you're free to share your valuable feedback and suggestion